Once again, we'd like to turn to Psalm 23. Looking at living the life of Psalm 23. Tonight we come to verse 5, new section. I'm going to speak upon a life of a prepared table. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. In verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, or I shall not lack. So there you have the shepherd's plenty. And then you go down to verse 5, and we see him providing of his plentiness. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. This is the result of the Lord's gracious presence that he spoke of in verse 4, thou art with me. Verse 5 has in all the psalm, the words are spoke very matter-of-factly, tone of certainty, tone of assurance. There's no doubt whatsoever in his mind. He's speaking as one who knows this by personal experience, as he does throughout the entire psalm. Everything he says in this psalm, he knows by personal experience, and he is presently living in the reality of these things. So he has experienced in the past the Lord preparing a table before him, and he is still experiencing the Lord preparing a table for him. So he's living in the reality of a God-prepared table. And we, as the people of God, can live knowing that the Lord always has a table before us. It's not one that you have to go looking for. You don't have to hunt for it. It's not hid. It's right before us. Like Hagar, there's a well right there, but she didn't see it until the Lord opened her eyes. And so it is with you and I. But we need to know this, that before us is a table prepared by God, a table prepared by God for us. Again, many view these words, thou preparest the table before me, merely as a statement of God's provision, and certainly it is that. It is a statement of his provision, but it's so much more than God providing material things or even spiritual needs. It's God providing himself as well. So when you read, thou preparest the table before me, it's really a remarkable and amazing statement. So let's consider the character of God's provision. Consider three words, two pronouns and a verb. Thou preparest, and then me. Thou preparest, and then me. The word thou, of course, identifies the performer of the act. It identifies where the prepared table comes from. Thou preparest the table before me. So the performer of the act is the one that is spoken of in all the verses leading up to this. He is the Lord, and He is our shepherd, and He is the one that makes us lie down in green pastures and lead us beside the still waters. He's the one who restores our soul and leads in paths of righteousness. He's the one that is with us in the valley of the shadow of death. And it is His rod and staff that gives us comfort. Thou. Again, everything, God is doing everything here. God is the actor throughout this 23rd Psalm. So holy, pure, perfect, righteous God preparest the table. Sovereign, omniscient, omnipotent God prepares this table. Now, to prepare something, that is an act that He has determined. Thou hast, or thou preparest. So He has determined to prepare this table before us. He has determined to do so. He has planned to do so. So it is an act of His prerogative. It's all of Him. It's all of Him. We don't have to furnish the table. It's already furnished. The fact that God is the doer of the act makes it, of course, something extraordinary. There's nothing ordinary about it. Nothing ordinary about this table. Nothing ordinary about what's on the table. Nothing ordinary by sitting at this table. It's an extraordinary act because He does it. The word me, of course, identifies the recipient of the act. Again, thou preparest. It's something He has determined to do. So, me refers to the one for whom the act is performed. So He prepares a table, but He prepares a table for me. For me. And each one of us can insert our names in the place of me. So this makes it personal. Thou, me. Two pronouns speak of two entities, God and man. That God prepares the table, that He prepares the table for me, He prepares the table for us, shows that it is God bringing man together with Him. So it's God and man. And the disparity between the two, God and man, again speak of how wonderful and how amazing this fact is. So you have man, he's corrupt, he's vile, he's a sinner, and there is God. He's holy, He's righteous, He's pure, He's faultless, perfectly good. There is man, he is a violator of God's holy law. He is a rebel against God. He is fully deserving of the condemnation of God. And there is God. And God hates everything contrary to His holiness. And He is a God of wrath. And He is a God of justice. So it is man the offender and God the offended. And the offender or the offended prepares a table for the offender. So that's grace. And then you have the verb preparest. That of course describes the act. God's the performer of the act. We are the recipients of the act. The word preparest, of course, is present tense. It doesn't say, thou prepared a table before me, or thou hast prepared a table for me. That's true, but it's much more than that. Thou preparest. Thou continually prepare a table for me. Several times a day. He prepares this table for us. And we are free to partake of that table. So to prepare, he sets in order this table. The very word prepared speaks of organization. So this isn't just a bunch of food scattered on a table. It's a table that has been prepared. It is a table that has been set in order. Everything on this table has been set in place by Him. And it has been set in place by Him for us. Now, to prepare is to make ready. So God has made ready this table. He does so by setting everything in order on the table, to set everything in place on this table. To prepare is to put together, to arrange. So it is God who has arranged this table. And He has arranged it with us in mind. He knows what we need. He knows how much we need. And He has arranged the table with us in mind. And He continually does so. We go to one place and there's a table prepared. God moves us on. We arrive in another place, and there it is again, a table prepared. That second table may be exactly like the first, and it may be completely different. That's all dependent upon what we need. And it's not what we think we need. He's the one that's prepared the table. He knows what we're going to need in any given circumstance, and He makes ready this table. He arranges it, sets it in order. To prepare a table speaks of forethought. To prepare anything speaks of forethought. So, you prepare a table in your house. You're going to have company. You give that some forethought. You think about, okay, I want this person to sit here, this, whatever. But there's forethought. And it speaks of His care. He prepares the table with great forethought, or with, we should say, His omniscience, His wisdom. He does so with great care for us, and love, and wisdom. And again, God is continually doing this for us. Thou preparest a table. So all of this is grace. It's all grace. The fact that it's thou and me, and that there is in between, and the verb is something done in our favor, that's grace. That's always grace. It can be nothing but grace. So the fact that He prepares this table is the unconditional, undeserved love and care of God. It is God's activity toward us in favor. God does something for us in our favor. Thou preparest a table before me. There is nothing on that table that is going to cause us any harm. Nothing. There's nothing on that table that is going to make us sick. Everything is in our favor. It speaks of God's power, His love, His care made available to us. That's what the table speaks of. That's what grace is. It's God's love and favor that goes beyond all claims to such. So when he says, Thou preparest a table before me, that presents God as our host. God is our host. It presents God, and now if God is our host, it is God as our gracious host. Thou preparest a table before me. And know that this is an act of God's amazing and abundant grace. He's the reason. He's the reason. We're not the reason. He's the reason. So it's a manifestation that God is mindful of us. If you are preparing a table for a group of people, you are mindful of those people as you prepare that table. So He prepares this table, mindful of us, interested in the well-being of us, interested in the well-being of His sheep. And everything God does on our behalf is in the interest of our well-being. He doesn't do anything that is going to cause us to lose spiritually. So God is loving, God is gracious, God is merciful, God is long-suffering, God is kind toward His sheep. You see, God can prepare a table for me here, and I may walk right past that table, pay no attention to it whatsoever, or I may be indifferent toward that table. But God in His long-suffering prepares another one, and another, and another, and another. Thou preparest. So we have the long-suffering, the mercy, the kindness of God toward His sheep. So thou preparest, thou arranges a table before me, and it's for me. And on that table, everything has been set in order by Him. Everything has been set in place by Him. Everything on that table goes back to thou. Again, it's present. Thou preparest the table. It's exhaustless, what's on that table. It's abounding. It's more than sufficient. And David is personally experiencing and living this. God's abounding provision. And that ought to be us as well. Every day we ought to live in the reality of a prepared table. And if we do, it will result in a life of joy. How can you eat at His table that He has prepared for you? You haven't had to do anything. All you have to do is sit down. How can you not be joyful? How can you not be thankful? And as He prepares one table after another, as He continually prepares this table, we learn to trust Him. Wherever God puts us, wherever we are, we know this. There's a table that God has prepared for us, and after a while you learn to trust Him for that table. You don't have to make your own table. You don't have to provide your own table. But you just trust Him. He's going to. And as you live in the experience of this table, you can't help but worship Him for what He has done. You can't help but be committed to Him and have devotion and allegiance and dedication to Him. So thou preparest a table before me. So it is God serving us. We are the servants of God. But when we read, thou preparest a table before me, that is God serving us. In fact, that's what you see throughout this entire psalm. It is God serving us. It is God satisfying us. Thou preparest the table before me. It is God attending to David's needs. That's God serving us. God doesn't need us to serve, but rather God serves us. We're undeserving of all, but that's what He does. So let's look at the table that God prepares. He ordains what's on that table. He sets the table. Thou preparest the table. That is, something has been spread out on this table. So it is a God-prepared table of feasting. On this table are not just crumbs. On this table you can enjoy a feast. Every time you can become full of what's on this table. It is a table of feasting. And again, this is before me and it is for me. It's for each one of us. Personally prepared by God. Personally prepared by God. God's provision for us. It is a table that is adapted, as we've already said, to our necessities. Everything on that table has been adapted to us. It is what we need. It is what will benefit you and I. It is a table that is richly furnished. Thou preparest the table before me. Again, God giving attention to His own individually. Now we can all sit down at the same table, but it's been prepared for each one individually. It's not just a collective table, but it has been prepared for us individually. It's not merely a table prepared, but it is a table, again, as we've already said, continuously being prepared for us. Again, a table prepared with thought toward us, with care toward us, with love and wisdom toward us. And all the blessing of knowing that there is this table. And all the blessing of being able to partake of this table. And the privilege and the opportunity of a God-prepared table for us. So this prepared table, it speaks of hospitality toward His own. It is God's hospitality of us. Hospitality includes the receiving of another. So it is Thou preparest the table before me. It is God receiving us. It is God's hospitality toward us. It conveys the idea of friendliness, conveys the idea of a friend. It conveys the idea of reception and welcoming others. A table prepared speaks of the fact that we have been received and that we have been welcomed to sit at that table. It speaks of generosity. A God-prepared table. This God-prepared table speaks of the fact that God is willing and that God is ready to receive us. And this is illustrated by His continuous invitation to Himself, come. Come. God prepares a table and He says, come. Come. Notice in Genesis chapter 7. Genesis chapter 7. Verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, come. Come. And when God prepares a table, He says, come. He doesn't prepare a table for us and tell us to go away. But He says, come. We see the same thing in Isaiah 1:18. Come, let us reason together. We see the same thing in Isaiah 55 in verse 1. Come. And we see it in Matthew 11, verse 28. Come. That's God's invitation to us. God prepares a table, and then He says, come. That's His hospitality toward us. This God-prepared table speaks of His plentiful provision for His own. Again, God knows what we need. He knows what we need before we need it. He knows how much we need before we need it. And He knows when we need it. So God knows what we need, how much we need, when we need it, and He prepares a table to fit our specific needs. Whatever the time, whatever the place, He prepares a table, and on that table, everything is good. Everything is good. Everything is beneficial to us. On that table is that which is precious from Him. It's all from Him. It's all from Him. And on that God-prepared table is that which will help us, and it will encourage us, and it will suffice us, and it will strengthen us, and it will give us comfort. On that God-prepared table may be that which instructs us. It may be that which assures us. It's whatever we need. Whatever instruction we need, whatever assurance we need, whatever we need at that moment is on that table, and He has provided it. So what a blessing to live in the reality of that table. On that table prepared by God are things that will bring us peace. There's nothing on that table that's going to cause chaos. It's going to bring peace. It's going to bring victory. On that God-prepared table are things that will prepare us for whatever's ahead. Will prepare us for whatever is right there in front of us. Again, in the presence of mine enemies. Whatever is on that table will bless us. And it will bless us abundantly. There's no need for God's people to ever go and search for another table. Thou preparest a table before me. Again, it speaks of God's continual and abundant supply for His own. In the parable of the Great Supper, in Luke chapter 14, in verse 17 we read these words, "Come, for all things are now ready." We need to hear that every day. First of all, we would ask, with God, is there ever a time when things aren't ready? Well, of course not. Come, for all things are now. Whatever now is, that's not the issue. Come, for all things are now ready. He's prepared it, and it's all ready. And He says, come. And we can live our life in that reality. Come, for all things are now ready. God never says, oh, don't come to me yet. Don't have things ready. He always has things ready. It's always ready. It's prepared by Him. So again, we need to live in the reality of this. We ought to be able to hear the voice of the Lord speaking those words to us. Come, for all things are now ready. They're all ready. All we have to do is come to the God-prepared table. This is beautifully illustrated if we turn over the book of Ruth, chapter 2, and verse 14. Ruth has been working in the fields of Boaz. Boaz, of course, is a type of Christ. Ruth is really a type of the bride of Christ, but application can be made to God's people. And Boaz, verse 14, and Boaz said unto her at mealtime, come, thou. You come. It's personal. Come thou hither and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. And she left not hungry, she left sufficed to continue to glean in the field of Boaz. And that's how it is with you and I. Boaz, a type of Christ, invited Ruth to come and eat at his table. And our Boaz says, come. And it was at that table that Ruth received strength to continue. And so it is with you and I. Our Boaz provides a table for us every day. Every day. And every day he issues this invitation. Come. And again, he knows what we need. He knows how much we need. He knows where we need it. He knows when we need it. Regardless of circumstances, regardless of the changes of life, He always prepares for us that which will benefit us, that which will profit us, that which will sustain us. And we are foolish if we do not make use of that table. Life would be so much different if every day we partook at His table. God's people, again, do not, we say this all the time, God's people do not have to live unfulfilled spiritual lives. If there is a child of God, and there are many, who are living unfulfilled spiritual lives, it's no one's fault but their own. It doesn't have to be that way, because God prepares a table for us, and on that table, again, is that which will help us, that which will encourage us, that which will benefit us. We read in Romans 2 and verse 4 of the riches of His goodness. And it is on that table that you have the riches of His goodness. In Ephesians 2 and verse 7, we read of the exceeding riches of His grace. And on that prepared table are the exceeding riches. Doesn't matter what now is, doesn't matter what the circumstance is, what's on that table exceeds now. It exceeds whatever we need. Ephesians 3 verse 8, the unsearchable riches of His grace. And God continually provides this table for us. So all the blessing of partaking of God's table, extraordinary abundance from Him for me every single day. There isn't a day that goes by, there isn't a moment where God has forgotten or was unable to prepare the table that we need. It's every day. Every day. And again, how foolish it is to be indifferent toward that table. How foolish it is to eat anywhere else. Children of Israel asked, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? He did for them every single day. And yet in their ignorance and unbelief, well, can God do it here? He does it everywhere, every day. Oh, to live in the reality of a God-prepared table. Brother Ben, if you'll come and lead us in verse of song, let's all stand and Ben will lead us